All right, all right, all right. Welcome to the F1 podcast on Sports with Sadaji, everyone. We had a wild weekend. We had Lando winning the race. We had Danny Rick almost getting the podium in the sprint. We had Lewis Hamilton improve from P9 in the race and actually beating George Russell for a change. And yeah, like I said, Lando won and Max did not. So yeah, action-packed weekend, everybody, and we are here to bring you the deets. So we're obviously going to start with Lando, right?
Yep.
Aniket, this guy, how many races did he have? 100 races or something? That he has on one day?
110.
110 races he has competed in, and this is his first win. He had multiple podiums, right? Lando is not Nick Hulkenberg, right? I mean, that, he would not
Yep.
have won a race. It was coming. Lando is one of the, part of the young generation of F1 drivers, and obviously he's a good guy. Drives pretty fast. He's McLaren's top man right now. Although Oscar might be coming for that crown pretty soon. Uh, and also, well, Oscar technically won a sprint race before Lando, but nothing to take away from Lando. He finally won a race. He had a chance at where was that, Sochi a few years ago, right, when he was leading.
Yep.
There is a Drive to Survive called, "Oh, Nikita Mazepin knows the clouds of Russia," and he still came last. But uh, that was the race when Lando Norris was leading Sochi, right? And he didn't want to put wet tires when it was raining. I don't know what he thinks. Lando is
He thought he
certainly
was Lewis there.
he's not certainly the brightest in the shed. But in pouring rain, he decided not to go for wet tires or inters. So he spun out, and who won the race? Lewis, Max, one of
Lewis
them.
won it.
Yeah, Lewis won. So finally, 3 years later, was it 21 or 2020? 21, right?
21.
Yeah, 21. So finally, 3 years later, Lando finally wins the race. He wins Miami. Obviously, he had some luck on his side, right? But that's the part and parcel of sport, right? You play the hand that is dealt to you, and Lando took full advantage of his luck and the car. McLaren had a whole raft of upgrades at Miami this weekend, and everybody could see how they improved the car. They're very fast. They were good on the straights. And even before Max Verstappen's issue with the bollard, and the McLarens were still keeping up, right? And you could also see between Oscar Piastri and Checo, Piastri kept up with Perez throughout the race. Like obviously Max outdrives the car, so obviously Max would have probably won the race if he didn't hit the bollard. But if you look at Checo and Piastri, that's very important. Piastri is probably as good as Lando, right? Piastri didn't even get half the upgrades, right, and get in the
Hmm.
car, but you're still keeping up with Checo. I mean, the Red Bull
Yeah,
obviously.
yep.
But
Yep.
so is McLaren back in the mix now? Is it what, top four?
Definitely. I think definitely back in the mix. So, firstly, like obviously, you started off with Lando. Finally, he broke that duck of the
Yeah,
races which he has gone through. He's always had chances to win in a few of the races which he's been on the podium. But unfortunately, he's either made a mistake or he just lost it out due to strategy misfortunes. So he had like 3 to 4 opportunities before to win at least a sprint race, but finally now he's got that maiden victory, and I think every driver would probably relish that maiden victory, like
yeah,
so for
definitely.
him, it's taken a while, but better late than never, right? So he finally got that, and I'm sure that now the confidence is just oozing through the roof for Lando and McLaren as a whole. I would say they've been through a lot of misfortunes over the last 10 years or something, or since
Right?
Lewis
Yeah,
left. They've had so many changes on the car, so many engine suppliers
yeah.
come and go,
Honda years, the papaya change, and
the papaya change, and the entire years with no sponsors at all. So
right,
they've been through a lot of stuff, in these last 10 years. But it does seem like finally they are back near the top of F1, which is good for the sport. McLaren is a legendary name in the sport, so it makes me happy to see them, competing now at the top. And we hope
right,
that these upgrades are just going to be there, in terms of making them stable, as well as being making them a force to reckon with, for this season and the next one till these regulations are alive. And then obviously we need challenges to Red Bull, right? Ferrari are trying, Mercedes tried, but they failed. and you have other teams also still giving their best, but nobody has come close to them in these last 2 or 3 years. So we hope McLaren is now the team which can put their foot forward, and with these latest upgrades which they had, they bought flow upgrades, beam wing, rear wing, front wing, everything they got. They got a lot of parts at this race, and Lando got obviously the most of it, while Oscar will be getting the rest of the half of what was missing on his car in the next race. So definitely the upgrades have helped. As you said, Oscar was close to the Red Bulls throughout, and then Lando obviously he took advantage of Max's adventurous, Bollard incident, as well as the safety car as well. So he took full advantage of that, and then he maintained his pace, which was something which Max could not hang on to
Yeah,
throughout the later part of the race. So definitely there is something in that car now which can help them compete with Red Bull. Obviously, one race sample size is too small. We got to see how it pans out in the next 2 or 3 races, and then we get a complete picture of that. I'm sure Red Bull will also be getting upgrades soon. So will Ferrari. So it's going to be interesting henceforth to see how the battle progresses.
yeah. And talking about Mercedes, guess which engine is in the McLaren, Aniket?
McLaren as a customer team is like outperforming the work stream at this point
Yeah,
by a long
when did
margin.
it, yeah, well, like when was the last time this happened, right? Like, I mean, the last time McLaren had a Mercedes engine, there was no Mercedes team at all, right?
No,
Uh,
that was 2012, and Mercedes was just started their resurgence back to, or I would say their
yeah,
reinclination back to F1, and they
right.
the whole bronze GP takeover. So that time
Right.
Mercedes was there, McLaren were running Mercedes engine, but yeah, they were ahead of Mercedes at that time because Mercedes was just new again into the
Yeah, Mercedes was,
F1 scene.
a brand new team.
Yeah,
Schumacher and Braun were still consultants setting the team up. I mean, there's a lot of work, right? Brand new team from scratch. And obviously, McLaren, they should have been a better team for much longer, but Ron Dennis, enough said.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's I guess Mercedes can take the race as an improvement because Lewis finally beat George, and they also went from P6 and P9 to P6 and P8. So I guess baby steps. Uh, your McLaren going from P5 and P4 to first, and Mercedes like, hey, P6 again.
It's a small win for the team at this point, right? So
Yeah,
they also got a few upgrades, I believe, at this race, which helped them gain one
yeah, they
spot
did. Yeah,
overall. and
I mean, they
but they
brought
did have
forward
a
some
more,
Imola upgrades to Miami, right? They were supposed to get it in Imola next weekend,
yeah,
but
they got.
they brought
I think they're going to get
Miami.
more upgrades in Imola. They got some of it
Yeah,
to
sure.
Miami.
Yeah,
So
but doesn't look like it helped. Uh,
yeah, but they did have a more competitive race. I would say it was not very extreme.
uh,
Previously, they've had challenges in race pace in the initial few races, but this race seemed pretty stable from that perspective. There was no major drop off
right.
in the race for them. So at least from the perspective of them having a good race, that seems to be sorted in my I mean
Agreed.
based on the upgrades. So
Right, agreed.
Lewis had
But
a
they
good
had a
race.
horrible sprint.
Lewis did not have
They
a
had a
good race
horrible.
so far. Yeah.
They had a horrible sprint. They had a horrible sprint. P12 and what? P16. Like
But that's
what?
because Lewis got penalized for the pit lane speeding in the pit lane incident.
Yeah.
So
Like come on, Lewis. You were in the race for like what 20 years at this point.
I mean, he's fast. He was fast at least somewhere. So yeah, in the pits. I guess
And
it happens to the best as well. So yeah, it happens to the
yeah.
goat.
And yeah, talking about the sprint, we saw kind of the sprint obviously had one crazy incident where uh, Landon Norris was taken out like the first lap, right? His race ended, and then Lance Stroll, and nobody's surprised Lance Stroll crashes out. He's blind. But Landon Norris's race, I mean, to go for the sprint, where race ended on in the first few turns, right, and then next day you go on to win the race, right? I mean, it's been quite a weekend for Lando. Because if you
Yeah,
saw him on Saturday, Lando was completely dejected, right? Because obviously he knew the car was fast, right?
it was.
Like where was Oscar in the sprint? He was P6, so the car was fast, right? And Oscar only had 50% of upgrades, right? And Oscar was really like just half a second behind Carlos, right? So I mean, they were really having a big duel throughout the sprint. Um, And also, along with Daniel Ricciardo, I think the only reason Oscar couldn't overtake Carlos was because Carlos had DRS from Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about Daniel, um, I mean, sure, bad race, but great sprint, huh? P4, is he back? Is he
Yeah,
back?
I think last couple of races definitely there's been a slight resurgence from that perspective, from his form at least. So
Yeah,
I think it does realize the urgency of being him having to perform to keep his seat in F1. So maybe
yeah,
that's probably giving him a kick up the ass in terms of
right.
trying to perform better. So hopefully he is able to continue this form in the next few races as well, and then it's just a waiting game at this point because you never know what the Red Bull hierarchy will do with their drivers. As soon as they
Yeah,
perform
and
bad,
also,
they are up for replacement.
yeah, yeah, and Yuki, I mean, Yuki is also showing signs of consistency, right? He was P8 in the sprint. He got the last
Yeah,
point with some great driving at the end, and then he was P7 in the race too, right?
he's
And
been
Daniel was like
extremely
nowhere, even like
consistent.
15. So
I think Yuki definitely has been extremely consistent, and it does look like he will be retained for next season. I'm not sure if VCAB have finalized their driver lineups,
yeah,
but Yuki has to be retained based on his performance this season. Definitely, he's
right,
improved quite a bit from last season as well.
yeah,
So consistently in the points for a car which is like what carrying parts from last season.
right,
So
yeah.
exactly. I mean, he's outperforming the car, I would say.
Yeah, I think the Red Bull, family. I mean, basically two teams, Red Bull and I guess Red Bull RB, but Red Bull and Racing Bulls, right, which was the league name. I think they have an interesting problem on their hands for next season, right? I mean, assuming Honda doesn't blow shit up and Max goes to Mercedes. Yeah, Max obviously was kind of assured until what 2026, 2027, right? He has a long contract.
He has a corner to 2028.
2028, right? Correct. So yeah, Max. Checo, whose career was on the line, last year. I mean, there's so many rumors that the Mexican Grand Prix, Checo will just announce his retirement and dip out from the sport. He's
Mm-hmm.
having a resurgence, right? Multiple podiums again. P4 this weekend. I think he had a good sprint too, right? P3 was he in the sprint? Yeah, P3 in the sprint. So yeah, sprint podium, P4 in the race, just 5 seconds behind Charles, and also the Red Bull had issues all weekend.
Yeah.
So Checo has been very, very consistent, right? Multiple P2s, good in qualifying, good in races, good in sprints. Um, Yuki Tsunoda has been, pretty consistent as well. Daniel Ricciardo, I think uh, Christian Horner will just use a P4 in the sprint as an excuse to keep him for next year. We
Mm-hmm.
all know how much Christian likes Daniel.
Christian
And
loves him.
obviously, you have Liam Lawson, banging the door of Red Bull saying, "Let me in."
Yeah.
And Liam Lawson was fantastic last season when he stepped in for the injured Daniel Ricciardo, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think? What are your bets on the Red Bull, family of teams next season? What's happening there?
It's difficult to say because at this point, if you have Daniel also performing well and Yuki is performing well, so
Yeah,
it's a toss of the coin, right? You have to wait and see how Daniel performs in the next 10 races or so, and
right.
then make a call. Otherwise, they might lose Lawson to another team, is what I feel. So it's a
Yeah,
tough
yeah. That's
choice for
what
them.
that's what I'm getting to. Do you think Lawson will
Yeah.
leave because he had what 5, 6 races last season? He showed his worth, right? He was
Hmm.
consistently good, and I mean, the last season the RB was not good at all, right?
Yeah.
It was a bad average car. But Lawson consistently, finished races and showed results, right? Didn't even get the points a couple of times, I guess. I don't remember. But I think he
Hmm.
did get a point as well, right?
He did
So,
here. Yeah.
so with next season, with the driver market, completely very very fluid for next season, right? With drive a lot of contracts and all that. Do you think
Yeah.
somebody like maybe a Haas or a Williams or even Alpine just swoop in, right, for Liam Lawson? Because good young driver, proven reliability, doesn't bend it in the wall like a certain Lance Stroll. Uh, you think Liam Lawson goes elsewhere next season?
I think definitely he'll have to consider his options if he's getting an opportunity elsewhere to drive in F1. So
Yeah,
I think Red Bull would definitely not want to lose him for nothing and keep him in the ranks because he's always. I mean, he's a great option to have. He's like a very capable
yeah,
young driver, as he showed last season. So at this
right.
rate, it does look like Daniel might be out of a seat next season again, and they might just throw Liam Lawson into the car. So. Yeah, it's a difficult choice for them, and that's something they have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Liam Lawson gets an opportunity, I mean, assuming Daniel continues his kind of upward trajectory, even
Hmm.
despite the bump, if
Yeah,
Daniel Ricciardo impresses the bosses enough to keep a seat for next year, and the other three continue on the same trajectory, and let's assume Christian Horner doesn't blow the team on his way out. Um, I think if Liam Lawson gets an opportunity in some other team, whether that's Audi or
yeah.
Haas, or whatever it is, backmarker team, whatever, I think you should really consider because at least as far as we have seen, Red Bull is not really a team to hold grudges, right? Daniel left them for Renault, went to McLaren, and he's come back, right? So I think obviously if Liam Lawson say goes to Williams and Alpine next season,
Same with
Vance is a
Albon, right? Albon left, went to Williams.
exactly, and
Yeah,
Horner still like Albon too, right?
yeah,
So I mean, assuming Liam Lawson goes to I don't know a Williams or a Audi, or a Haas next season, right? Gets consistent results for a couple of seasons, and maybe after 2 or 3 years, maybe a Daniel or a Checo retires, or Max gets bored of F1 and leaves. That Red Bull seat opens up, whether it's RB or
yeah,
Alpha Tauri, call themselves and the main Red Bull team, the works team, and maybe you see Liam Lawson back at Red Bull, where he, I guess, dreams of racing, right? Um, but
yep.
yeah, Red Bull definitely have a interesting problem on their hands, and
And
yeah, I
Max
think
finally didn't win the race, which is a nice surprise
yeah,
to us.
Max Verstappen. I mean, I think yeah, I think Max is just trying to increase his challenge, every race and see if he still wins or not, right? I think he
Yeah,
just
keep
got
doing
caught.
it.
He just got caught out by a strong McLaren, like because Charles, he had the luck with Charles because Charles's water sip was broken, so Charles was probably just not pushing the car too hard to get to P2, right? Because Charles, I mean, after the Bollard, the Ferrari did have pace on the Red Bull, but they just, I think, Charles did take it a bit easy because of the heat and this, lack of water in the cockpit. But yeah, what is Max doing, man? Just runs over a Bollard and it's like, okay, I'm going to damage my floor. Let's see if I can still win the race. And if there's no safety car, he probably would have won the damn race.
Yeah, exactly. As I said in the post-race press conference, if my mom had something, then she would have something. I don't know, something. He said something along those
Yeah,
lines,
yeah.
like which was
Max was amazing this weekend at press conference. You're just trolling
yeah,
the media left and right. It's like, yeah, man, I just hit the ball on purpose. They were saying that too. Like the report's like, why did you hit the ball? He's like, yeah, I'm bored. I hit the ball. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to.
I mean, it's just fun and games for him at this point. He knows that he's got the
Yeah, I
car
think he
capable
knows
of
he's going to run
delivering.
away with the. He knows he's going
But
to
I
run away
really
with the
hope
midpoint, anyways.
McLaren does indeed be the car that'll challenge him
Yeah,
in these next few races. So
we all
that'll
thought it
be
was Ferrari.
interesting
But once again, it's
because
not
Ferrari
Ferrari.
did not have a very good race. I would
Yeah,
think they got outperformed by the McLaren as well, and
right.
they were not actually close to a victory this race.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely they were not.
both Leclerc
Like
and
even the
Sainz did not have the best
right.
races.
Yeah, even in the sprint, I mean, obviously, Charles was P2, but if
And Sainz
Lando,
got penalized for
right,
uh, the overtake on Oscar in the race.
right, yeah, like even in the sprint, Charles was P2, but if Lando didn't, mess up SQ3, right,
Yeah,
and didn't have somebody go bowling into him. Who was that? Lance Stroll? Who hit him? You remember the sprint?
I don't know actually.
Yeah, but whatever.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
who it was, but I mean, if you said Lance Stroll, I would believe you.
yeah, typically. So yeah, I think if those things didn't happen, Lando was probably I don't know getting P2 in the yeah yeah
Yeah,
uh, P2 in the sprint as well. So and yeah, talking about we obviously I just touched upon Lando's qualifying randomness, but yeah, I mean this was a very a weird Miami weekend, right? You had what like 40 degrees heat or 100 degrees for our Yankee friends, right? The track temperature actually hit 50 degrees, which is 120, right? And despite this, you had drivers struggling to get the tires in the right window, right? and even sprint qualifying, right? So if you look at or the SQ2, Lando was the fastest by like a lot, right? By half a second almost. Over Charles was not just yeah Sergio, yeah, because the track ramped up towards the end and Max and Charles were chilling in the pits. Um,
Yeah,
Lando was like 3 tenths ahead of Checo in SQ2, and the time he set in SQ2 was not beaten again until Q2 the next day, right? So yeah, very very weird thing. And even in the race, we saw some top teams are having problems with the soft, some teams are having problems with the hards, some teams are having mediums. Strategies are all over the place, and you know what? I like this. I like this randomness. For far too long, every F1 race, it's like this. You know, it's it's like very prescriptive, right? Start on softs or
yeah.
mediums, go for 20 laps, pit, get your hards or mediums on, and then go to the end of the race, manage your tires, do some Lyco, right? Don't bother overtaking because it'll burn your tires up with all the dirty air. It's been, and teams are happy to play it safe, right? Sitting behind the driver in front. Oh, maybe we'll just get, 15 points instead of 80, whatever. Uh, I think we need more races like Miami. Don't you think?
I agree. I
Randomness on the
agree with. I
track.
think it's like the Pirelli tires are also like very sensitive, I would say, this season. So you have to get
Yeah,
them in the right window, otherwise they just don't perform for you. So teams
right.
have to design the car around the tires as well. So it does seem like some of these races we have right now is are an exception when you just get a very you just get randomness, as you said, in terms of the tires, wherein some teams go for the soft, some teams go for the medium, and that's how it works. So I mean, definitely it spices up the race. You don't have the traditional, go run the mediums and run the hard, and then that's it. The race is over. So
Right.
you get that kind of an option with different teams. So some teams may be, able to push more in the beginning, and then the other teams might catch up to them later on in the race. So it does, influence the race from that perspective. So I hope we do get more races like this. Also, it could be that it could be the nature of the track. Maybe Miami is like since it's a new
Yeah.
track, it could be like because of the characteristics of the track, the layout of the track, the tarmac of the track. It could be because of that we have all this randomness as well. Maybe we go back to square one at Imola in terms of uh, teams running just one set of tires in the
Yeah.
pit stop
Square
change.
one
So
and back.
yeah, so I mean, I would love to see more. I generally love the Tie Wars era which we had between Michelin and Bridgestone because you had
Oh
so much
yeah.
of randomness at that time. So I
Yep.
was
Yep.
just watching a race back from 2003 United States Grand Prix at Indianapolis when Bridgestone intermediate tires were much faster than Michelin wet tires. So that was crazy to see. So that randomness in fact influences the race. So let's see if we get more of that in the upcoming races. Although it's hard to say at this point.
I think before the hybrid era, races were way more exciting. And obviously, I know some of our viewers may not like this, but refueling, man, refueling just, you know, it was so random, right? Because you had so many more strategies in a race,
Yeah,
right? And I think obviously, I think also teams had more tire choice available to them now. With F1's sustainability efforts, tire choice is also very restricted what teams can have, so they also played very safe. I think back then teams also had access to more tires. And I still remember there was this race in the rain when, the Ragenmeister before the current Ragenmeister, this, before Lewis, Michael Schumacher, he pit 4 times in the race and still won the damn thing, right? That
yeah.
guy was just that was a mad lad. Like imagine pitting 4 times in a race today and winning a race. Not happening, right? You're never seeing a race like that again, ever. Unless F1, kind of has a whack up its ass. But yeah, it was really a different time. And obviously,
Yep.
multiple tire manufacturers. I think eventually Michelin just exit because I think that also coincided with Ferrari's dominance when there were two tire manufacturers, and Ferrari obviously used Bridgestone, and I think Michelin didn't like being the you know the the whipping boy every race, where the Bridgestone team is winning and the Michelin team is losing. I think only during Alonso's years, when Renault had Michelin, they won two titles. But uh, it used to be a very, very Bridgestone dominant. And the weird thing is, most of this grid those years actually used Michelin. More teams use Michelin than
Yeah,
Bridgestone. But the Bridgestone teams used to finish higher all the time, not just Ferrari. So, yeah, it's. I mean, I hope we say multiple tire manufacturers one day, but I don't know, man.
yeah.
Ferrari wanted
I think for
to.
F1 now, from the cost perspective and all that, it doesn't make sense
Yeah,
to have two manufacturers. So that's when
I think
everything
we just
comes down
Pirelli
to.
to, yeah, I think we just need Pirelli to spice things up a little more, right? Sure, keep your 12 or 13 tires, allocation for the race, but
Yeah,
make it tires. I mean, obviously, we don't want a repeat of Baku 2021 where tires are just blowing up on the straights, but have some. I don't know, maybe a little less reliability, so then your teams are pitting twice or thrice in a race. At least twice, right? Have let's have three sets of tires in a race. Screw it. Get some excitement back. You see more strategies. It may possibly lead to Ferrari never winning a race again if you see more strategy, but you never know. Saint Fred Vassar is here, so.
yeah, exactly.
uh, but yeah, I
That's
think this was a very interesting weekend. Yeah, I don't think there was much of us,
we had an appearance from probably the next president of United States of America, Mr.
No, don't say.
Donald
No,
Trump,
no, 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 no,
uh,
no.
the who was in the McLaren garage, who
Yeah,
was
yeah,
totally not endorsing his presidential campaign. He was just like there to see F1. He's a passionate F1 fan.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the reason he
Passionate.
was there.
And obviously, Miami is, Florida land, a big Republican stronghold as well, right? And I mean,
Hmm.
apart from Trump, we also saw a lot of celebrities on the track. We saw one of the Kardashians.
Camilo
I forget.
Cabella,
Yeah,
Jimmy
yep,
Butler.
yep. Oh, Jimmy Butler got his wish, right? He wanted Lando to win. He was wearing
Yeah,
a McLaren with Lando written on, a permanent marker, uh, and he,
yep,
he got his he got his wish.
he did. He
Uh,
did. He's a big McLaren or maybe a Lando fan, I guess. So
I
yeah.
mean, he's never supporting anybody else now.
Now he definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Miami is generally like a cool spot for celebrities to hang out as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
definitely a
And
hit with them.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the newer US races, like Miami and Vegas, are definitely more
Yeah.
celebrity match compared to Austin. Uh,
Hmm.
I think Austin is more like a traditional F1 race, with your normal $15 burgers, not costing $200. Uh, oh, which by the way was this media sensationalism because that menu was from the VIP area, so obviously it
Okay.
was 200. But because
Good.
one of my guy I know went to the Miami race and he showed me $16 burgers as well. So that was just
Right.
media being the media. But yeah, I think I think for example Miami last year drew a lot of flags saying boring circuit, boring track, and all that. But I think this year we had a very exciting race, and even if you look at the numbers, right? If you look at broadcast numbers, this year's Miami GP was the most viewed F1 race in the US, right, in US history. So 3 point, obviously it was held that it was on ABC instead of ESPN. So ABC has obviously more reach than ESPN, but still, all the US races are always on ABC. They're never on ESPN, right? Only the out of content races are on ESPN. But
Hmm.
and despite the fact that Vegas, not Vegas, sorry, Austin has been there for much longer. This year's Miami GP drew 3.1 million viewers, which is the highest of any US race in the US, right?
Yeah.
Possibly any race is on ABC, right? Obviously getting an advantage. But yeah, hopefully we'll see if Austin and Vegas can crack that number now. And I guess it will also help by Game 7 being early in the morning for some reason. Uh,
Hmm. Of the NBA
like,
playoffs.
yep, the Cavs and the Magic Game 7, the decider was at what 11 a.m. or something on East Coast time. So what's it, 8 a.m. Pacific? Like, what, you want guys to wake up
Yeah.
at 8 a.m. to see a game? Like, what's going on? But
10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern.
yeah, that is so random.
Yeah.
And yeah, the race at like 3:30, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's why Jimmy Butler also there this weekend at the paddock. But yeah, definitely, interesting. A very very, I guess F1 will take it as a very successful race this weekend in the US.
Yeah, that's the reason we have having three races also in the United States, because it's just a growing sport at this time. So
Yeah,
even if they are not the most passionate fans, people are still learning about the sport
yeah,
there, and there are a lot of people who are turning up to the races, and that's what that's what
yeah,
F1 wants, and
yeah,
that's what Liberty Media also wants. So
yeah. And we see regularly attendance records being broken in the US as
yeah,
well now compared to past years in US races, right? And obviously, I think, yeah, I think also F1 has been a traditionally, European sport. The US more was into NASCAR and Indy 500 and, these kind of things. But obviously, with
yeah,
F1 growing three races in the US now, rumors of a fourth in New York. I don't know. Street race and marathon would be really stupid. Uh, but I mean, we did have the Formula E race in Brooklyn a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think three races, possibly a fourth, maybe return of Indy at some point. Indy was a very good track too.
I loved
Uh,
Indy. Yeah.
yeah, Indy was great, and also Drive to Survive also has been a big factor in
Mm-hmm.
getting new getting new audiences to the sport. Not just US, but globally too.
Yeah.
Obviously, we F1 fans find the drama cringy, but that's what brings in the newbies, right? Sure, they may not see the next season of Drive to Survive once they actually see the sport, but to get them to the sport, you need a hook, right? And I think Drive to Survive is a very good hook. Uh,
Yep.
but yeah, I think apart from that, oh yeah, something that everybody missed, the pundits and everybody missed this weekend was that in the sprint, guess who was P10?
Valtteri Bottas.
No, Logan Sargent in that
Oh,
shit.
Logan hasn't got a point. Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
he needed a point because it was sprint, so no points
Oh
for
yeah,
P10.
P10.
But
But still,
Logan Sargent was P10, and Pierre Gasly was P9. Two shit boxes in the top 10.
but that's Miami for you, throwing up surprises.
Yeah, and Alonso was P17.
Alonso, he spoke all that nonsense. Firstly, like I didn't like whatever he said regarding the whole Spanish and British thing.
Oh
So he
yeah,
should
what
probably
what
kept
the hell
that.
was that, man? What the hell
I
was
mean, I
that?
don't understand the nationality aspect bringing that. That's
Like
just
he
childish
won
from
two
him.
titles himself. Like he's Spanish. He won two titles himself. How will he win two titles if F1 at the
I
bias,
mean,
right? Like
you're talking about someone whose title was robbed, and you're telling he's getting favoritism because he's British. So it doesn't make
yeah,
any sense to me. And all the stewards were like from different nationalities, and nobody was British.
yeah. I think it's not about British bias or against Spanish bias. I think F1 has traditionally been very very inconsistent, right?
Yeah,
Even 2021, right? I mean, sure, there was the madness at Abu Dhabi, but if you see throughout the season as well, there was so much inconsistency, right? Like throughout the season, you had Mercedes fanboys saying, "Oh, Bank's getting preferential treatment," and Red Bull fanboys saying, "Oh, Mercedes get preferential treatment." You had like as a neutral, you could see the entire season, right? I think F1 has just historically been very very inconsistent. Uh, I mean, they are trying this year, and now when they try Fernando's like, "Oh, Spanish bias."
yeah. Fernando
It's
had a very bad race. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Aston Martin just had a very bad race. I mean, at
Yep.
least they got a couple of points in the race. Alonso's P9.
Oh, one last
But
thing we need to discuss before ending the show is the point system might change and reward all
yes, yes,
drivers till
yeah. How did I
P20 act.
forget? Oh my God. Yeah. So F1 wants to give. So a couple of weeks back, I mean, we didn't cover on the channel, but there were some rumors that F1 wants to extend the points to P12, right? And then this weekend, yeah, we see that F1 wants to avoid points all the way to 20. And even
Basically,
worse,
to all the drivers
yeah, right,
if you
exactly.
finish.
And even worse, they want to remove the winner's advantage. So they want to make it P20 for first and P 1 point, sorry, 20 points for P1 and 1 point for P20, which makes no sense at all.
Oh, that doesn't make. I mean, like I don't know why they want to do it though.
Yeah, why are we
How
having
does that make F1 competitive? Because then that means even if you
exactly,
finish P20, you're getting a point.
exactly. Like
So Williams would
why
be happy to finish P20, 19 and 20 every race. They're getting points.
Exactly. Like
Uh,
F1 is not a participation sport, right? It's the premier class of motorsport racing, right? It's where
I mean, obviously,
the
this
most
will have to go through the
talented drivers
teams.
compete. Sorry.
I mean, I'm saying this rule will have to go through the teams and then the FIA and all that. So definitely,
Yeah,
I mean, as of now, I don't think it'll get ratified anytime
I
soon.
hope.
But it's a
Yeah,
ludicrous thought from the F1 side.
yeah. And if you think of how the point system has evolved over the years, right? Initially, I mean, okay, fine. I don't know what F1 was in 1950s, but
Yeah,
for a long time, at least in modern F1, initially the top six, used to get points, right? And during the Schumacher era, it became top eight, right? I think it changed actually during Schumacher's run of five titles, it became P6, or during Mika's. Around that period, it became from top six
top
getting
eight.
points to top eight. And I still remember, even though I was this, basically a kid that time, there's a lot of furor about two extra drivers getting points, right? When it expanded from six to eight. But obviously F1 was like, hey, we have 10 teams, F1 started to have 10 teams more consistently and
Yeah,
20 drivers. Um, the sport changed, we had more consistent contracts, uh, I mean, I think was it Ayrton Senna had like a race contract with Williams and McLaren at one point. But
yeah,
by the 2000s, we had the more modern version of multi-year contracts and you know 20 teams, sorry, 20 drivers more consistent in the grid. So we went from six to eight, and I think somewhere during Lewis era we went from 8 to 10 drivers
sure.
getting points, and we also landed on this modern point system where a win meant a lot, right? So when only eight drivers got point, the winner only got 10 points, right? And
Yeah,
second place got eight, and then it was 6-1
yeah.
for third to eight, right? So winning was not incentivized a lot even then, right? Only I think the only good thing that F1 did in the last 20 years, in the all the bad decision it did, phasing on V10s, banning refueling, all the tire madness. The one good decision they did was incentivizing winning races, right? 25 points, second is 18, so you have 7 point advantage, right? Winning is really, really incentivized. You're even if a driver is second and he's say a couple of seconds behind, he's really incentivized to push his tires and go
Yeah.
first because it's 7 points, which is very hard to make up, right? Especially when somebody like Max Verstappen is in front of him, right? It's very hard to make up 7 points, right? But yeah, man, I don't know. This 20 to 1 or even all 20 drivers, and then what? Anybody who sets fastest lap gets a point, not even top 10. Then, like, what's the point? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and oh yeah, we also saw, while we pile on the FIA, we also saw Max Verstappen was very pissed off at next year's regulations, at least from
2026.
2026, right? He was saying that at least from the simulator, it was not looking good at all because of all the active aero. He's like, if you have to downshift, like 500 meters before the hairpin at Monza, then he was like, what's the point of this, right? Like, especially tracks like Monza, the whole point is you brake as late as possible and you go as fast as possible. And now if you're downshifting to seventh gear 500 meters before to manage your aero, like, what's the point even? And I think Max raised a good point. He obviously, like Lewis is one of the more technical drivers on the grid. He really cares for his craft. And yeah, it doesn't. I'm really worried for the future of F1 if you have
I am
this
really worried as well. I am not sure how the 2026 rules will pan out. It seems very
man.
complicated at this time, and the whole going carbon free and or carbon net carbon zero carbon or whatever they're calling it at this point.
Yeah, and
The
the
whole
funny thing is,
engines
yeah, the
being
funny thing is, when they emit way more carbon traveling to 24 countries in a year, right? Going
exactly.
zigzagging
So
across the world. They increase the number of races, and they're like,
yeah,
oh, wait, put some ethanol in your gas, it'll be fine.
I mean the only reason F1 is not having more overtakes is cars are so hard to follow, and that's been the case since F1 has kept on changing the rules in the past few years. So if that
Correct.
is that's the main thing which we're looking for improvement in 2026. But if we don't get that, and if that gets worse, then definitely
Yeah,
F1 has got it wrong again, like how they got it
yeah,
wrong
exactly.
in 2022.
2024 was supposed to be a fresh start, but then they did made those ride height changes at the beginning of 2023, which basically said that it nerfed 40% of the effect that 2022 regulations had on following, right? So it's become
Mm.
much harder to follow again with dirtier and all that.
Yeah.
And 2026, yeah, at least as of now, let's not jump the shark, but as of now, yeah, it's not looking good at all. But that's it for today. We'll see you guys before Imola. It's once again a traditional race weekend, no sprints, thank goodness.
Yep.
Uh, but yeah, we'll see you before Imola and we'll see what the paddock throws up in the next week or so. The F1 silly circus never ends, right?
Yep, I agree. But yeah, before Imola, please, like this video, subscribe to the channel, share with your
And
friends, and drop any comments on what you like us to discuss. We are F1 fans from a lot of many years, so we can throw
right.
up old topics as well if you want. So
Yep,
if you have anything, just post it in the comments, and we'll be happy to chat.
yep. All right then. We'll Aniket and I will see you next week for Imola. See you everybody.